The Return of the Twelves by Pauline Clarke, Chapter 19, Butter Crashey. So what we've got to do, Janie, Max announced when he had told her everything, is to find my skate. That will give us some idea which way they've gone. Yes, she said. She was extremely impressed at Max's dream or imagining or vision about the young men's departure, and particularly about the string. And by the way, my marbles have disappeared, Max added. This seemed to Jane even more amazing. She opened her great blue eyes and said, "Goodness," very gustily. "Come on, let's go," Max said, leaping up. First, they bicycled to the bottom of the hill, which led out of their village, down the road upon which Max thought he had imagined the Twelves going. This road took a turn to the right and went down to a beck, which they crossed by a bridge. Then it began to climb again. All the way along, Jane and Max searched the verge of the road, one taking each side, for some trace, some faint clue of the missing soldiers. But they found nothing, not a detail which might help them, far less Max's skate. Over the bridge, when the road climbed again, Max jumped off and searched by the road. "I thought perhaps they might have left the skate here," he said forlornly. "After all, it would be heavy to pull up the hill." "Yes," muttered Jane. It seemed hopeless. The world was so immense. The young men were so small. "If only it was snowing, there might be a chance of tracking footsteps. They would leave footmarks, Max. Tiny weeny ones. Smaller than birds, like mice, perhaps," Jane went on, lost in her imagination. "Only not paws, shoes in a column." "Well, it's not snowing," Max said. It seemed useless to look for minute footprints in the summer dust, or even for marks of the skate wheels. On the road there was nothing to mark, and as Max now pointed out, they could not use the skate except on the road. They must have a smooth surface, or it would not run. Jane agreed. "So where shall we go next? You know what I thought, Max? When you said this road, I thought they might be going back to Harworth. It's the direct road. So did I," Max admitted. Both had thought it, but neither had said it. "If not, it might be anywhere. Just to hide, absolutely anywhere. Yes." They looked gloomily over the bridge into the stream. "We've got to try something," said Max at last. "So let's try the opposite direction to what we thought. Take that small side road where this road turned right. "Yes," said Jane, who, like Max, thought there was a kind of challenge to fate in taking the direct opposite. They bicycled back up the hill and took the steeper lane down again. They passed some cottages and, following the lane, came out at a mill. "I say, look, it's an old mill. It's partly ruined," Jane said. "And there's the river again." "Not the same river," Max said, "I don't suppose." Now all round the mill it was slightly wet and marshy. "You might make footprints here," Jane said. "Look, you've made some. Let's leave the bikes." They did. They stepped gingerly by the side of tiny puddles and cresses and shallow overflows of stream water fringed with grass. "You see," Max said in a dreamlike sort of tone, which Jane recognized as the one he used when he was making things up in his imagination in their games. "You see, they camped here for the day. It's a super place to hide." Jane said nothing. She only looked at the muddy ground for some confirmation of what Max was saying. She could see a way into the old building where the door was broken. It was round by the mill pond. She turned off the path and went this way. Between the pond and the door it was muddy. Jane thought she detected a two-wheel track narrow across this. She stooped down where it was clearest, and surely, those little marks beside it were the marks of their feet. "Max," she said sharply, "look!" Max looked and nodded. "Let's go in." They pushed open the door, squeezed in, and looked round, blinking. In a corner, by a big pile of fallen stones, gleamed Max's skate. They both exclaimed and rushed toward it and peeped behind the stones as if the young men might still be there, waiting. But there was only an old mustard tin, oval-shaped, half full of water, and a little pile of withered watercress. "This is where they camped," Max said. "Look at their water," Jane nodded. "And they didn't want the skate anymore, so they weren't going downhill," she said. "Or if they were, they weren't going on a road," added Max. So they might have been going over fields, said Jane. Let's go down to this river, Max said, and he picked up his skate and went out, holding it tenderly because it was a gun carriage which had carried the 12, so not merely a skate. Jane followed. They walked round the mill again and down to the stream and found the footbridge. When Max saw the footbridge, he at once crossed it. Jane followed. Max was behaving rather as she had heard that water diviners do, as if he were a sleepwalker. She saw no reason to stop him, since they had better look somewhere than nowhere. The footbridge led to a footpath. Max marched along, an orchard on his left and a stone wall on his right, and the footpath led beside the river and then away from it, when the river did a bend, and then near it again, right by its brink. And as Jane looked into it, she said very quietly, "You know, Max, they could have gone by river." "I know, this way, though," Max said. "It's flowing this way." Max scuffed along the footpath, thinking how much easier it would be for a young man to march here than in the grass, which to him would be quite tall. And then, lying half hidden in the grass by the path, he saw the marble. Jane nearly fell over him as he bent to pounce on it. In the palm of his hand, he showed it to her. "Recognize it?" he said. "I would, anywhere." It was a particularly translucent shade of sea green, and it had delicious wavy ripples in it, like flowing hair. Max had always privately called it the mermaid marble. "So we're on the track," Jane said. "They've dropped it." Max flung himself down on the grass and looked at the marble as if it were one of those crystal balls fortune-tellers have and could tell him things. Jane sat beside him, thinking and enjoying the sun and the noise of the water. The search for the young men made everything seem more magic. In every tuft of grass which the black-faced sheep had left wavering uneaten, under every large weed by the path, behind every boulder, beneath every bramble or bilberry, or swinging upon a single bracken frond, strayed from the moors, there might be a young man. How comfortably Monkey and the Middles would climb that bracken stalk, crawl out onto the spread of the fern, and sit there sunning themselves. How usefully they could lean, the whole lot of them, against that large puffball in the grass. Max stared at his feet and raced across the field and the gap in the stone wall. He was gone so fast, Jane hardly kept up with him, being still lost in her dream about the bracken. She caught Max as he was climbing the stone step in the wall. Jane looked down at the glittering emerald moss in the wall at the bottom, and in the niche between wall and step saw something move. It seemed quite natural to Jane that Butter Crashey should be there. She had imagined them in so many secret places. He had stepped out of a hole where he was hiding, and now held up his arms imploringly, his face anxious and wrinkled in case he should not be seen. "Max!" she whispered. "Look!" And she nudged him. As soon as the patriarch knew he had been seen, he smiled and waved and bowed his head in relief and delight. They slipped down on the grass by the step, and Max picked Butter gently up. He said nothing. He was so pleased. Indeed, he had some difficulty in seeing Butter clearly, because his eyes had filled with tears. He had longed so much to find him, and here he was. Butter pointed the skate in Max's other hand, rubbed his own small hands together. "Waiting for us," Jane whispered. "I hoped you would find the abandoned gun carriage, O Genie," said Butter Crashey. "And I stationed myself in the path, for I must needs consult you. The 12s are on their way back home." "Do you mean Haworth?" Max asked. "Yes," replied the patriarch. "When I heard the fate that was likely to befall us, I knew only there we should be safe. There where the 4 Genii used to be. We shall be welcomed and christened. Oh, we shall be welcomed and cherished, and no harm will come to us. Is this not so?" "Yes, it is," Max said. It was obvious. "They'll never let you go once you get there," Jane said. Butter nodded, satisfied. So I suppose, he said. "It may take many days, and we have already had 2 disasters." And he went to tell them of the journey, why they had left the main road, and what had happened on the river. "And sad relate, O Genie, the noble Stumps is once more lost, for which reason I implore your help." He told them where he had last seen Stumps. "He'll be floated downstream, Butter, We will go and search for him, Max promised. Where are the others? Butter Crashey stepped to the edge of Max's hand and pointed with his minute finger to the earth. Underground, he whispered, smiling. In the early dawn we met an enormous monster, four-legged, brown, with whiskers. We opened fire at once. The cannonballs flew fast and furious. The creature received one on its chest and right paw and leapt into the air all 4 feet from the ground. As we could tell by its alarmed expression, it was far more frightened of us than we were of it, and was about to dive into its hole when I implored it to stay. It was a rabbit, Jane said. You lost the cannonball, said Max, holding it up. Butter nodded. It proved gentle in the extreme, said Butter, showed no wish to eat us, and led us into its domain. We have come miles in perfect safety, led by this animal. I came up to watch for you, but the rest are disporting themselves in an underground hole, singing merrily, while Bravey plies them with underground water for wine. If we had but the noble Stumps, we should be happy indeed, having found the genie. Max had been thinking quickly. We will search for Stumps. When will you march again? He said. Tonight, said Butter Crashey. We shall come and watch over you, Max said. We will go now and work out the way, and at the same time look for Stumps. Butter bowed his thanks and smiled. Jane and Max smiled back gravely. Goodbye, noble Crashey, Max said, putting him down. Until tonight, said Jane. The patriarch hurried along the wall, turned off at a knot of grass, and dived underground. And that's the end of chapter 19.